Okay, maybe I don't want to sort of delay or go late. People can look at the recording and join in any stage. Well, thank you. It's a growing family, which is fantastic. The list is really expanding out there. So today, there's a couple of things we'll start with. Firstly, just a little bit of an introduction. We've got a few new members. There's Emma there from Bogan. So she can wave hello. So she's from Bogan Shire, probably the best named shire in Australia. And then we've got Maria. And do we have anyone else from Brimbank? So Brimbank's a new addition to us, which is fantastic. Oh, there's Eleanor. So I think there's two from Brimbank. Or is Derek? Derek's from Brimbank. Who else we've got? Who's
Derek's from Monash.
Oh, Monash. Sorry.
No trouble.
Well, I'll have to change it so we send out the password so I don't have to admit people. And we've got a Philippine visitor. One of our exciting bits of news is we've launched into a project for Fleet with the Filipino government for a department called DPWH, which is actually the main roads and construction. They actually have over 10,000 assets, and that includes major dredges and all sorts of things. So it'll be a fairly significant fleet asset owner. So they basically have 3,000 staff looking after the assets, the vehicles, and then they have over 40,000 staff doing the building and construction right across the Philippines. So I think we've got Olsen from our partner over there, Sonny. I think Sonny's there. Where's Sonny? Somewhere there. Hi, Sonny.
Hi, Sonny. Yep, I'm driving here.
You're driving? Oh, hey, that's not safe, mate. I'm not responsible for your bad behaviour.
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
That's great, Sonny. You could join. So yeah, DPWH is a pretty significant customer. They're really taking a version of Fleet and really modifying it up. One of the attractions they had was that to meet all of the regulatory requirements within the Philippines, they wanted a fleet asset management system that they could really meet their internal government processes. So they've got a whole lot of control around, purchasing, vehicle ownership and what have you. Quite different to any of the Australian regulations. Fuel management is a big issue over there, so they're that's a kind of pushing the product in a slightly different direction, but they're really taking and running with that. So today we want to really put it out a little bit more to, I suppose, the user base a little bit. So Andrew's going to kick off in a minute or two on some of the work that they've been doing, some of the stuff they've been discovering, a little bit about their sort of change in processes, because they've now kind of adopted some real-time stuff and some learnings. And we really want to make this more than just me talking shit. We'll have a bit of a presentation next time, and I can do a little bit if we get enough time on what we're doing with the Geotab integration and the data there. That's looking really exciting for us in terms of what we can pull from it. Paul's done some preliminary work, and over the next couple of months, it'll be sort of more and more integration of that data to really automate, some of the processes, as well as really add value. Andrew's team, our partner in the Fleet as a Service, Duncan and Andrew, I think, is somewhere there. He might not be there. They're working on also some of the safety profiling through that data. So that's really quite cool. We'll have more to show and say on that as we go forward. Oh, there's Michelle coming in, another one. So one of the topics I did want to quickly cover, and it's not necessarily to get answers today, but one of the things that I suppose is happening, you probably all sort of know the sort of speed at which we can unusually develop applications and changes to the app. And Paul wanted to sort of raise the issue that for a period there, we've had sort of a test environments for every customer for people to go in and play and what have you with their test base. what we're finding is that, you guys are, really operational and not really looking at it in terms of sort of the software per se. And it's become a little bit cumbersome to have a test environment for every single customer and what have you. And also the engagement, I suppose, we're wanting to have a more communal engagement there so that people can have a look at what we're doing, but also come to an agreement about how we get our release cycles in terms of, as you know, we're pumping out stuff pretty damn quick. And so what we want to be able to do is, I suppose, come to some sort of agreement that says, we're going to release stuff. We'll do all our rounds of testing, but we also know that no matter how many people or monkeys or whatever we want to do to do testing, there'll still be issues with the rapid change that we're going through. And so what we want to be able to do is, I suppose, just acknowledge that what we'll do is we'll do our rounds of testing, do releases. We'll basically notify people when we expect to be doing that next release. We'll stand it up in a test environment, let people go in and play with it and have a look at it and do whatever they want to do in testing. And, we just encourage as much feedback and, the more feedback, the less panic we have if we do release something that's got an issue. I suppose just with the ongoing commitment, like we've always had, is that, if something's found, we're fixing it, ASAP and quickly and getting on top of it. I suppose we just want to balance between risk and opportunity. And we just want to be open in that discussion, let everyone know that that's kind of our thoughts. We're trying to land in a position that's a balance between the two, because we certainly don't want to sort of end up in a situation where we need 500 people signing it off and, every 6 months we're releasing something. I think you've kind of all jumped on the journey on, this evolution and rapid evolution. We hope we don't trip over ourselves, and I think these sort of these groups will, if they become more needed or more required in a faster, a shorter time frame, then we can always do that. And that all of us are on email, whether it be Paul, myself, Adam, or any of the rest of the dev team. So if there's any specific concerns or issues or points or things that we need to talk about there, I don't know whether we're getting our crowd here, but maybe anyone give any feedback now or just email us or whatever. I'll throw it out there and set myself on mute for a minute and we'll see how we go. Okay, well, that's successful. Let's move on.
Hello, Mark. I have a question. It's Michelle Mulo here.
Hey, Michelle.
With the Mantis items, I just wanted to know, what is your acceptable way of working? So, for example, when others might put in a Mantis item that might be similar to ours, rather than have multiple items on the same topic, what is the accepted way of working? Would you want us to add our comment to someone else's Mantis item, or they add it to ours? How do you want to do that?
That would be ideal. That stops us having duplicates. We kind of use Mantis in that sense, in that it's a real sort of starting point and a discussion. Some of the internal ones go on for pages, ones that have gone for 6 or 12 months, major development items. So we're more than happy to consolidate and, we do link them together if there's sort of a lot of common ones, but we're more than happy for people to chime in and make their own comment. Paul's going through them at the moment, and obviously, there's always that balance on how he feels it impacts everyone else and how it looks. He and I and Adam, or particularly he and Adam, are continuously having discussions on some of those items. Obviously, the bug ones are easy. They're kind of easy. If something's not specifically working, then that's an easy one to focus on. The sort of requesty ones are harder in terms of, particularly if it's not general. But yes, please. The answer is please feel free, and I'll let Paul maybe make comment on that in case I'm standing on his toes and that's not the right answer. But anyway,
no, that's fine, Mark. I hadn't really considered how that would be managed, but that's perfectly fine. A lot of the requests, they might even, I guess what from your point of view, Michelle, you'd probably need to review all the Mantis items to make sure that you're commenting on the right one. So there will be, I guess, duplicates in there that we can sort of link together. If I see that sort of stuff, I might probably just link them all together and make a master. If that's, if I see sort of things that are common, but people have kind of missed, I can do that sort of work as well. Send it back out and say, here's a conglomeration, David's lodged this one, which is kind of like the one that you've lodged, which is, someone else has got something similar, put them all together and develop as a whole. I certainly don't.
Would we see that visibility pool when we log into Mantis that you've sort of pulled them together?
I think you should be able to.
Yeah, I think the general permission we've given everyone is updater in that group, so that you should be able to sort of see it and even update others. We haven't given you quite developer, but there's sort of 3 or 4 levels in Mantis, and updater is, I think you should have pretty good visibility. Just let us know if you're only seeing your own. Just let us know, and we'll try and make it, because as you know, we're open with all this stuff. The more people know, the sort of easier it is from our point of view, and we've got nothing to hide. So, it's the more we can work together, the better it is.
I know when I went in there, Mark, it's Brad here from Tenterfield, I wasn't sure how to actually find whether or not a topic had already been covered myself, like whether there was a search function or something. So I had a bit of a scout around, but obviously Paul, yourself, and perhaps Adam would know what topics are currently open. So I end up just submitting one, and it got fixed. But I think that's the issue, is we don't read every single topic that's there.
No, we don't expect you to either. So I think if you go to just items or requests or whatever it's called, there is a search you can just put in, and it'll just do a fairly simple text search. It's not sort of anything. It's not a Google search, but it is a text keyword search. It'll search all of the words within the items. So if you are putting items in, it's like any sort of fairly simple database. If you can remember to write a few keywords in there, it's very easy for us to find them again. If you sort of think about the classification or the area, and just somehow and put that in the title as well. If you can sort of put, I kind of have a standard where it's sort of the, try and have a sentence which starts with a major topic and then diminishes down, and also gives a bit of an overview of what it is within that. So, that kind of makes it a little bit easier. But yeah, Paul, in terms of the releasing cycle, did you want to make any more comment on that? I know that we'll go ahead.
So I guess I raised this with Mark basically because I'm developing pretty much constantly. My preference would be to release more often than less often. I'd like to get it down to a point where I can do sort of minor releases constantly, rather than sort of these big kind of updates where everything sort of gets changed at once. I think that would be helpful for you guys, because it'll not everything sort of just transforms in front of your face. But the problem with doing that is that it's very labor intensive from my point of view. There's lots of buttons to click, lots of things to do. And lots of areas to make mistakes. So I'm working on development to basically push those updates out via web service. So if we say release, I can have a list of environments that it goes to. Press a button and it just goes. And so that's where I'm aiming for. And that will initially be into a test environment, and like Mark said, have a look at it. But often these things sort of sit there for a long time before we can get the sign off, and that's sort of holding up the next release. So I've now got another release, which the last release I did was a month ago. That made it to some production environments, didn't make it to all. I've now got another release on top of that, which is ready to go right now. I've got to get that out, which means the next production update for someone like Bundaberg will have multiple releases in it. I don't sort of want to get to that situation where I'm sort of having to wait so long that you're not seeing the benefits of the work that I'm doing. So it's pointless sitting in test. So we need to get it into prod machines as fast as possible. So like I said, if we can put it in test, have a quick turnaround there, and then push it into production. Maybe we have some sort of time period saying, okay, well, it's in test now. Have a look at it, and we can agree on what that time period might be, and then we can put it into test directly after that time's expired, and that will give me some sort of cycle to work to as well, instead of sort of just doing stuff and hoping it gets there.
And there's, I suppose, some of the discussions and topics that we'd like to, one of the topics I'd like to raise, and I don't know, and I'm happy to sort of either set up a working group or whatever, but one of the topics that's come up in terms of future development. So this is sort of flowing on to what future development looks like. There seems to be a lot of interest around safety and safety audits and risk analysis. I don't really have a very good handle. I don't know whether we've got anyone in the group who's a risk expert or someone who can give us some guidance. I know we've got probably a lot of people here who've dealt with it in some form. I suppose, like the rest of the product, we'd like to have it that it's not purely ticking a technical box. It actually is going to be providing some real value. So we'd like, obviously, to do both, and that's really what we're trying to head for. Duncan's waving, so maybe Duncan can make a comment.
Would it help? I wrote for the IPWA manual, I wrote the chapters on safe driving and risk management. And what I want to get to is converting all that theory, etc., into practical applications. Is that the kind of thing that people want?
I think it's a lot of things. There's the vehicle risk assessment stuff. There's I don't know, Sean or Andrew. Maybe Andy, you could almost launch into some of your stuff. I know you've got a bit of an opinion on some of this stuff as well.
Oh, we'd definitely be interested in that, Duncan. Also around the plant assessor type functionality with risk assessments. So our history, we had a fairly long history with plant assessor. We were paying probably about $8,000 a year. It all of a sudden went up to beyond $20,000 a year. So essentially, we've pulled out of plant assessor and we're managing it manually at the moment through, is it Word documents or Excel sheets? And look, we're doing okay, but I could see some massive benefit with it being integrated in Formbird and part of that process. So,
okay, I'd need some, just so you know, I'd need some help. I come from the behavioural side. So it'd be great with someone with some real plant assessor experience to come in over the top. Be really welcome.
Sure. I'd be happy to put someone as part of that working group.
That'd be great. Thank you.
If anyone else is interested.
I've also had experience with plant assessor and carrying out risk assessments. And I was in the same boat as you guys, Andrew. Plant assessor just totally upped their price. And I went from 15,000 to 40,000 a year. But I have actually been able to renegotiate with them and brought them back down to like 20,000. So, but I'm going to continue with them at this stage. But yeah, to incorporate plant risk assessments into the fleet management system, it would be amazing.
Oh, that'd be good. So, Marie, you're willing to chip in a bit there?
Yeah, if whatever I can. Yeah, not a problem.
Dob people in.
If it helps everybody. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, great. Brad, do you have any thoughts?
We're probably well behind the eight ball there with a lot of our safety stuff. With the minimal resources we've got, we're running around trying to plug as many holes as we can. We're still even chipping away at COR at the moment. So, yeah, there's not a lot I can unfortunately help with there, but definitely be interested in whatever you've come up with and would happily help where I can, but I haven't got a great deal of resources in that area, Mark, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, it's fine. No worries. Okay, Andrew, you're happy to take over?
Yes, you'll have to give me control, Mark.
Yeah. Now you've got to name yourself more than Andrew, because I think I've got a couple of Andrews now. So I might be making the other Andrew. Oh no, there's only one. Okay, did I make the right Andrew host?
Okay. So can everyone see a PowerPoint screen?
No.
Oh, that was pretty. That
was a
well.
resounding no.
Okay, hang on a minute. Hang on. How about now?
We have indeed. Well, it's coming up.
You might want to use the presenter.
Where do I find
So
that?
you know how there's that little the scalable bar down the bottom right hand corner.
Oh yes.
The little lectern beside it to the left.
That
You
one?
click that one. It should make it whole screen.
Okay. So I chatted with Mark about potentially presenting something today, and I decided to go with something that's a little bit left of centre, you might say, and I suspect it's something that we all struggle with. My experience has been as most fleets struggle with this, and we traditionally have. So what we're looking at is when we implemented Formbird, one of our major goals was to record clean data. And you've probably heard garbage in, garbage out, big data, et cetera, et cetera. We've all heard these catchphrases, and it kind of irritates me a bit because we've probably traditionally had pretty good discipline in place in our workshops, but we have never actually really been able to achieve clean data. So even though we had good discipline, we still had gaps in our data, and we found it difficult to enforce the processes 100% of the time. So the mechanics knew the process. We had done lots of training, etc., but we never really had a process to overview what they should be doing and having a look at it. So when we moved to Formbird, we've created a very specific work order, which we simply call a Supervisor Review Work Order. Okay, and it just allows the workshop supervisor essentially, or someone of that nature, to review the work process. The supervisor review, it's important not to confuse it with a quality control type process about the asset. It's typically not about the asset itself or the quality or the quantity of the work performed. It's about the process that was followed in the capturing of that data. So the way it works basically is when a technician has finished all their work orders and they believe that the asset is ready to leave the workshop, they then create a supervisor review work order. And there's basically two reasons that we create the supervisor review work order, two primary reasons. One, it alerts the workshop supervisor that the technician has finished the work, that has finished their assigned work orders. So that's what they believe that asset is now ready to leave the workshop. And two, it provides the workshop supervisor the ability to review the works management process and ensure the data is correct. So they were the main reasons we went into that. In the future, some of the secondary benefits will be we'll be able to I guess review the performance of the technicians in how they collect and review that data and how they interact with the system. So ultimately, the results of the supervisory review work orders will be discussed at technicians' performance appraisals. So that just gives you an idea of how serious we are about the data. We are super serious about it. We are on a journey. I'm not going to suggest to you we're 100% accurate, but I would think 95% at least, I would think we're doing pretty well, but we've still got some learning to do. So I just thought I'd share today what we have done and where we're moving to. And I've got, just one sec. I've got a couple, I'll go into the live system, which is probably a risk in itself, but I'll go in and show you an example of what I mean by supervisor review work order and what they're about. So essentially, like I said, we've created, we talked to Paul and Mark about creating some of our own very specific work orders. So not necessarily a repair work order and not a PM service work order. And we've created a multiple, probably 15 other work orders around supervisor review, recording travel time, cleanliness of assets, conditions, assessments, etc. And this is one of those work orders. So this is the report. Typically, the workshop supervisor will have the workshop dashboard open, and they'll also have this open in the background. And they keep an eye on this regularly. And it just allows them to see that if there's a new one pop up, we've been talking to Paul about some additional functionality to allow them to keep an eye on this regularly. Obviously, until the supervisor completes this supervisor review and completes the work request, the asset is still recording downtime. So it's in our best interest to get through these. I'll just try and hide. Does anyone know how to hide that?
Which one are you trying to hide?
That top bar.
You might be able to just shrink it up, mate. So if you hover it on the corner, or you can shift it to the bottom end. So if you went back to where you
It's okay, Andy. Just keep going. It's not a big deal.
Okay, so essentially this is a supervisor review work order. So the first thing the workshop supervisor would do, we encourage both the supervisor and the technician to review the work request and simply ask a question. Have we satisfied this work request? We've been asked to do X. Have we satisfied that? Is there additional work to do, etc.? So it's basically a check for the workshop supervisor. Now, we've created it in checkboxes. The way we're describing this, depending on what the work request is, you can choose to complete all of these or only a limited number of these, depending on what it is. So we want to know, have all the requirements been met? Have they booked out parts? Is there any additional repairs required? Have they taken the correct amount of photos, etc.? And then what we do is we rate the technician a pass or fail on the first inspection and ultimately on the second inspection. So this data here is what we will ultimately use in the technician's performance appraisals to, to review their performance. Does it add extra time to the jobs? Yes, it does. I can't deny that. But I believe the impact may be 5 minutes, anywhere between 1 minute and probably 5 minutes, depending on the complexity of the work request. The benefits for us definitely exceed the additional time required. So that's what we've been doing. We've been having a lot of success. We're getting some nice, clean reporting now. We're able to really, I can start to look at the data now and easily find gaps in the data. If we've got 100 records, for example, and we're missing data, it's very easy to find those pockets where there's data missing now. So we did have some resistance. Obviously, when we implemented this, we gave both the technicians and the workshop supervisors a bit of time to adapt. We had one workshop supervisor that had completed, approximately 500 of these, and it only ever failed 2 technicians. And I call bullshit on that. I knew that wasn't the case. Really, what they were doing was protecting the technicians. So we had to have a discussion about that. But look, we've had really, really good success so far with this. We're up around, I haven't checked recently, but around, we got going at the start of the financial year. We've done about 7,000 work orders so far this year. Traditionally, we would complete about 8,000 annually. So we're probably on target to complete about 20,000 work orders. And our aim is to have all of them very accurate and complete. So look, that's essentially the process and what we're trying to do. Happy to have comments. And I've also I've done opened a couple of reports here, if anyone that's interested. I've run this report, scheduled versus unscheduled, from the start of the financial year. This is really our go live. Currently, we're 78% scheduled and 22% unscheduled. So to me, a fantastic result. Really happy with that. So happy that I actually started to question whether we were actually filling in these right. Were we cheating the figures? So we've been back and reviewed what we consider scheduled and unscheduled, and I'm quite comfortable with the process. We're consistently anywhere between 75-25, and depending on when I run the report, I think the best we've done is 82% scheduled. So that seems to be fairly consistent. And the other one that we look at fairly regularly is just our turnaround time for repairs. Basically, how long did it take us from the time we got an asset into the workshop to basically completing that? And if we look at it in a table view, since go live, we've been completing roughly 75% of our jobs within 24 hours, 3% in between 24 and 48 hours, and about 20% over 48 hours. Those figures have tended to remain fairly consistent. I run them monthly. And obviously they're dependent on your age of your fleet and access to parts and all sorts of things. But yeah, I just thought I'd share those for general interest. Anyone got any comments?
20,000 work orders are expected from sort of everybody, Andrew, do you reckon? Like, or anybody? Is that like a common
from us, or
well, from the group, really?
Look, I guess so. We in our old system we had consistently completed about 8,000 a year, consistently. We're now on target to do about 20,000. I'm not suggesting we're doing any more work. What I am suggesting is that we're now recording the details of all the work being done. So all the tyre repairs that are being done, all the external repairs, we've really tightened up and we're trying to collect every piece of data. So yeah, technically we're not doing any more work. It's just more that we're now capturing the data.
So you're splitting it between sort of 1 to 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this 20,000 work orders, does that include the supervisor review and the sort of internal stuff that you created?
Yeah. Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, just have you kind of finished there, Andrew?
Yes.
Okay, I was just going to actually say, Lachie just reminded me, and I was just thinking about in the background, GWW, and I'll get Lachie to chime in, has been doing this really almost from our go live in 2017. It became part because I'll give a little bit of background, then hand over to Lachie, and he can correct me. GWW, which was City West Water up until 3 months ago, has outsourced all of their fleet work, so they're not fleet work, their repair, their reactive work, or all their work, and therefore it was actually part of the sort of contract management process as well. So the review was actually looking at costings and everything else. So it actually almost goes to another level because it actually looks at not just the completion of the job, but it's also the whole satisfaction and whether or not the data's complete, but then also have all the costings being completed. And in fact, it's actually in that system there, it actually stops them doing a whole lot of things and does a whole lot of validation all the way through the whole job. It's sort of really evolved. I'll let Lachie talk to it rather than me opening my big mouth.
Essentially, what we had around the same time that we implemented Focus 3 was we were also going through a contractual change at the same time. The primary contractor that we had that undertakes all our maintenance activities, both responsive and planned, was utilising our previous system, but we had some contractual issues with the data capture and also with the cost capture. And what it really led to was there was no real initiative for them to close the case properly. So the data quality was a big thing, but also the costing. And what we were finding were we do around 30 to 40,000 cases a year. So activities, there's sub-activities of those, obviously. But what we were finding was realistically, when the case is closed, that's where the cost should be associated to that financial period. In the previous system, without a supervisor review, what we had happening was the guys would just close the case and then they'd go, oh, we forgot to put these costs on. And that may be 6 months later on when they receive a rogue invoice or someone's been away and forgot to pull the paperwork on their desk. So the cases were being closed, say, in April, and then these additional costs were coming in September, October, but those costs were hitting this financial year. So as part of reallocating the contract back to those guys, the decision was made that no case can be closed and no financial transaction will occur until the supervisor review has been completed. So it's mandatory for every case. You physically can't close a case in our system unless you want to take a supervisor review. And realistically, it is just a checklist saying that all works have been undertaken, all associated actions have been completed, all the questionnaires have been filled out, all the deliverables have been made available, all the costs have been entered, and there's some additional questions there. So because we work in the water industry, all the assets that were worked on, were they identified correctly? So if it was shown in our GIS as 100 mil CICL pipe, but they've got out there and it was a 150 ductile iron pipe, if they acknowledge that, have they generated the correct GIS amendment form? Those type of questions. So again, it does appear onerous and it does add some time, but it is really beneficial to make sure that someone's putting their name to it. And essentially it is that supervisor sign off. It's not just an administrative step that they have to undertake to say, yes, now I want to close the case. But it does really put a name to it, saying, I've reviewed this, I've understood that all the work has been completed, that there's nothing left to do, that any additional paperwork or deliverables have been provided. And if I close this case, I'll have no more remit for further compensation. So it is a pretty hard and fast rule. It doesn't mean that they don't make mistakes and we have to regenerate cases to take those additional payments, but it's also a metric that we can measure as well. So it's not just the supervisors, the technicians that you're providing oversight to. So the supervisor is reviewing their work and saying, yes, you've done a good job or not. But you can also apply those metrics to the supervisors who are signing off. So in the case of the supervisor who is only doing 2% fails, then realistically that's a metric against him, not providing his oversight correctly, not just the technicians who may be passing and failing. I suppose the only word of warning is that you don't want to make it so onerous that it becomes a task they don't want to do, but you also don't want to make it so easy that it becomes a tick and flick. So there does need to be some oversight of the oversight, which I think we previously alluded to, but realistically this is someone putting their name to it so that you can go back and say, well, Mark, you signed this one off and you said that Paul had done everything, and if Paul hadn't done everything, then Mark, you shouldn't have signed it off. So you do capture some metrics there, and it has really helped.
Yeah, thanks, Lachie. Yeah, I was sort of thinking while Andrew was talking that having you, yeah, it's a good feedback. Yeah, absolutely. Any we've got a little bit of time left. Something, I mean, we sort of started to cover it last time, but I suppose, is there anything that people want to see regularly on these sort of discussions that we can put as a standing item, a standing point on our agenda? There's just let us know where you want this to be going every time, and we'll take as much, take it and run with it.
Yeah, Mark, David here. I was going to suggest if you're able to give us an idea of any updates, mods, might be just a quick snapshot, that would be helpful, because we're in the infancy of implementation, getting used to the system, understanding what mappings create what reports from what fields, and not really looking at what's new. So that would be helpful. You're on mute, mate.
I'll hand it over to Paul. We won't do a sort of full-on discuss, but maybe he can just run through a few points and things that he's been looking at, and just a bit of an overview, which gets everyone up to date. It's a good point, Dave. Thanks.
Yep.
Paul?
Yeah. Yep. You want to? Can I grab the screen, Mark?
You are, Paul. Hang on. I must get people to put their. Once we get more than one Paul or more than one Andrew, it becomes difficult. Make host. Here we go.
All right. So quickly, one of the way that the work order that Andrew created can be done through this template creator updater. So that the supervisor review work order was done via this method. There's a number of other things that you can create via this method as well, and the newest one, based on some feedback from David, is this custom form. This is kind of a form that just sort of sits. It's not a work order. It's not a request. the way this works basically is it grabs, there's a template that drives this with a set of standard fields on it, and the fields that can be modified or sit in this details panel. So all of these forms, when you create them, will have a set of standard fields. And that includes sort of created date and the name of the form and the type of form. So I've put in a way so that you can tag the form as a form type. Custom fields here. So any data that you want to collect, and there's numerics and text, no box, and I think date is in there as well, and the ability to upload an attachment. So you can create those via this method here. So, like I said, I think that'll solve one of David's issues where he was wanting to sort of track who was sort of driving a vehicle, and there was like additional drivers to that vehicle. The other thing on this form too was because it's not really linked to anything, there's a number of links available to link it to something, so it doesn't just sort of float away. So you can link it to an asset, you can link it to a request, or you can link it to a work order. And I may put in another sort of other link here. So basically link it to whatever. I haven't sort of decided that yet. So that's that. One of the requests from Ngaire, we had some issues with inheriting materials. Oh, sorry, that's not this one. This is service details. So the service details documents that are generated from a service configuration, they will appear in this list. This is the information that appears on the work order, and I thought it might be a good idea to just be able to sort of see quickly what the work order might look like by selecting one of these. So instead of having to create a work order to say, okay, well, does that that's all sort of sits here at the bottom of this table in the service configuration. This one was for Ngaire. Material inheritance. So the way that the service definitions work is that you can inherit information between definitions. Sometimes materials don't need to be inherited. So I've put in an option there where you can either this is switchable, where you can set the expected consumption and then prevent the inheritance from subsequent service definitions when this thing is linked, and that this function is either on for you or totally removed, and if it's totally removed, no inheritance takes place. So that should address some issues at Bundaberg. Asset export, this is kind of new. So this is just like a CSV dump of all the asset fields. Sticky filters. So I can have, this is only here at present, but any of these sort of external filters to a data table and potentially other sort of inputs to, say, reports are now sticky. So this is this information saved to your account. So when I come back to it, it will re-inherit my selection here. Like I said, not all of these are sticky at the moment. I'm probably looking for feedback on which ones would be good and which ones are not so good to do, because I can imagine that it might be quite painful to have them all doing that, but some might be good. And I can quickly implement that function in the rule sets for those items. Work order manual timesheet entry. So some of the had some feedback saying that people forgot to actually record time against a document. There's using the timesheet entry here. They can do it manually via this method, which will just create another time recorder document. This one's for Brad, where we've put in some a new disposal type. So Brad trades a lot of his assets in, and that's a method of disposal. So this is a new method of disposal. Brad, I've still got to do an update to your environment where the disposed name of trader is still text. I've changed that to your suggestion, which is the supplier. But we need to do. I need to get this into your environment, and then if you've created any of these, switch them over to supplier documents. There were some issues with fuel CSV mappings where the date format in this format would not have the time format would not have a leading zero. So the import would fail because some of the information had leading zero, so zero, hour 01 sort of thing, and the other ones would be just one. And the importer expects the time format to be consistent across the file. So we've put this little checkbox in here that says if I find a file with an inconsistent number time format, I'll just add a leading zero to that on the import. And this checklist, Michelle, I'm still working on the problem that you've got with things not displaying properly. Whether you know it or not, it's specifically for your tablet and no others. So it's been quite tricky to diagnose, but I've tested on all of the Samsung tablets. I can't make it to work, I can't get it to happen except for the S7 Plus that you've got. But I think I cracked it today, so cross fingers. This is a set of checklists for the PM service. Also appears on the daily driver check sheets where you can, this is the information that's inherited from your service details documents or via the service details documents from the service definition. So this list is driven by that. And I've added like a modal pop-up which you can add notes to this the service check and display those notes to the person doing the check, which I think will come in quite handy. So there might be instructions in that or however you want to set that up. And aside from that, lots and lots of bug fixes. And yeah, that's probably about it, David, for the minute. But there's lots of work there. So.
Thanks, Paul. That's great.
Back to you, Mark.
Thank you, Paul. Okay. I'll how do I drive this anyway? Maybe you stop sharing, just put it back into normal mode. So, yeah.
Okay.
So I suppose, well, we're actually running pretty much on time, which is good. Won't be radically over time. I suppose I'd hand it back to the crowd really in terms of anything you'd like to add to today's meeting and or you'd like to sort of see regularly, or a topic that you'd like discussed next time that we could prepare for, or anything, you know, anything of anything. Don't rush me.
I'll jump in. What I really liked was when Andrew actually put together exactly how they're using it and some of the thinking around their scheduled and unscheduled. I thought that was really good. So I wouldn't mind actually seeing some examples from others over time, just a small little positioning of how they're using it and what they're thinking. Because for me, I looked at it and said, so unscheduled is 22% good or bad. And what does that mean? How do you, when you look at the real numbers, can you actually, is there something critical coming out of the unscheduled data that you could actually make a change to the way you train or you operate or you do something? So that was quite good to see the way the data's been used that way. So any sort of insights from others, it would be good to have that as part of this little forum, just to say, look, here's from a client's perspective, how they're using it, because it can give insights to all of us on things that we should be thinking through.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, that certainly. Yeah, does anyone have any other comments on that? On the sort of?
I know with GeoTab they use a lot of just common data and they try and make it as anonymous as possible. They do a lot of benchmarking like that.
Yep.
So they capture a lot of the data, which no doubt you guys could probably capture. Obviously, it'd be up to the individual people to opt in or opt out of it. But yeah, that process of benchmarking would be very handy. So for someone like myself, different size fleets, we don't have a great deal of data because they're only a very small fleet. But someone like Andrew and some of the others here have got quite large fleets, and that data's a bit more representative of the industry in general, I guess. So that sort of benchmarking ideas Andrew sort of suggested would probably be beneficial for everybody, I'd think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not just about, it's about that performance of the individual, but it also is about how you make a change to your training potentially, or just the way you're operating your systems. So you can look at the individual and say, hey, actually they're out of line with everybody else, which is what the data will teach you, but it'll also educate you on, actually, you know what, there's a group who are making that same error again and again and again. So how do we actually change that? And that'll clearly come out of the data, but you've got to, you know, we're doing exactly the right thing. When we get the data right, you've still got to, in the end, make sense of it into the right workflow and also into the right analysis, because you can make crappy decisions from, you know, just looking at the data at a certain level. It's got to, in the end, filter to the correct position, you know, so you solve the right problem. So anyway, yeah, so I'm quite... it's just good to see that you can, you're pulling it down to the right data, and I'm all for getting data right. If you get the data wrong, you're just dead. We've seen that with lots of data systems too.
So, Paul, marketing Paul, just pose a question, setting a time. Is this kind of time of day, and what regularity would you guys like to see this? Is quarterly the right number, or bi-monthly, or whatever? You know, I mean, we're happy to have it as often as people want to have it, but we don't want to have waste people's time and or, you know, diminish the enthusiasm.
Ngaire's got a comment, which I think will tie into how often we have this.
So, hi everyone, Ngaire here. Monthly would be cool, but I also had a suggestion, had been thinking about it when you went open this morning, that maybe we could set up a user forum, as in like a web-based platform that, you know, we could log on, you know, hey, has anyone come across this issue that we could just discuss in-house, in amongst ourselves, and then if it becomes a bigger issue, then log a job, or we can bring it up at the next user group meeting like this platform. So something like, I believe IPWH have got it as well too. They've got an online forum where people can post and go, hey, have you come across this issue? People might want to go, how do you try and achieve your 75-25? So 75 scheduled, 25 unscheduled. How do you run your program, like your servicing program? How do you deal with your disposals? Like any of those little questions that we're all saving up for, you know, a month or 2 months or 3 months, and we may forget. If we've got that capacity to, you know, basically just jump on and jot it down, someone might be able to answer it quicker. And that way we're not also hassling the developers constantly. Sorry, Paul and Adam.
Paul will be on board.
Oh, that's a great idea, Ngaire. I suppose our problem now is what technology out of the thousands of technologies we use, whether it be a Facebook or a WhatsApp or a blog, or does anyone have anything that, you know, obviously we can sort of put it on the website or what have you. I know what.
Put it on the website with, like, you have to have your log on. So our current logins that we're already using, could you kind of link that and build it in? So we're already.
Yeah, no, it's a bit hard because you guys have got, like, you guys have got single sign. Oh, you'll be about to have single sign on or what have you. But it's an interesting point if we pulled it from the. But then again, a number of the customers are moving towards single sign on, which means it's you know, separate.
Because I think maybe something that's linked to, well, this is just my personal choice, but something that is linked to a website that people have got frequent access to, or if it's, I don't know, built into the system as like a little question mark or a help box or something.
Yeah, it could be actually part of a centralized service. Let's. I don't want to make it more complex than it has to be. So if anyone's got some, actually Janine just popped up and volunteered to do something, but
Email.
Email, yes, we could certainly start with email and just have an email group. That's always. Look,
I'm in an email group with sort of Queensland fleet managers, and we just shoot out an email with questions, and typically someone within the group, there's probably 20 or 30, will find an answer within 24 hours of some issue that we're having. I think
we can certainly start with that anyway, rather than overcomplicating it.
Well, I know Ken's apparently there's a problem with one stuck in the actual ceiling space up there.
So how did stick to once a quarter at this point, or?
Someone's actually said once a month, I think. Look, if for Paul, who's releasing quite often, and you know, like he's developing all the time, I think it would be handy to be able to get together, you know, probably no more than once a month, to bring ideas together so that we're all, I'm not saying on the same path, but there might be some similarities where someone might be doing something and you go, well, that's actually a better idea than what we were thinking of. Or, you know, I see this as a really good information sharing exercise. We don't have to be doing the same thing, but it might be helpful to everybody to learn from everyone.
Look, I'm more than happy to. It's very little workload from our point of view in terms of putting it on. I just didn't want to overload people and it fizzles out after 3 months because everyone goes, yeah, I've heard that. I think we do have enough activity, and it's, you know, from our point of view, it's great engagement, and it's always good to, you know, hear from everyone. And certainly if we can stick it to 1 hour, then, you know, everyone can just jump in, jump out. We record it, and whoever's available is available. So I'm more than happy to. You know, if general consensus is that it's a high enough value to put it on once a month, and that we can get enough people coming along, and suddenly people don't drop off for 6 months because they're bored of it, then absolutely love to have once a month. So I'll be guided by you. Maybe we schedule next month, and if there's only 3 of us on there, then.
I think the thing is, Mark, the more frequent it is, the shorter it's likely to be.
Yes.
And if you're recording them, I missed a few in a row, but I watched them all via video. So, you know, depending on how time pressed you are, that's always an option for people to just jump on and have a video. Obviously, they can't ask questions, but they don't miss out on the releases and those sorts of things. So I guess, yeah, suck it and see. But the more frequent it is, hopefully the shorter they are, and the more people can just dive in and dive out, because we're all busy, I dare say.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so more than happy. Let's stick it in for next month, and we'll just keep going that way. And if it keeps growing and building, then fantastic. Is there a certain time that does this time work for everyone?
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
Excellent.
Mark?
Yes.
Would you like to mention the fact that we're going to run up in 2 weeks' time a similar user community for our water users?
Yes, absolutely. That's a very good point, Ian. So, yeah, we're going to do a very similar thing for the water guys, and obviously a slight shift towards water. And we're also you know, if people are interested, we can either incorporate in water and or do another one, which will be a technology one with whatever emphasis. You know, we certainly like the idea of this engagement and feedback and all the rest of it. And it's sort of, you know, it is fairly productive from our point of view to be doing this. So again, if people are interested in joining other ones, we'll keep everyone informed on the other ones, but, you know, definitely don't feel obligated on any of them. And hey, if we're running 2 or 3 of them a month, then that's fantastic. It's great. Okay, well,
can I just ask a very quick question, Mark?
Yeah, Michelle. Yeah, sure.
From Focus and also from the fleet side, obviously components are similar, and sort of where my foot's kind of in both sides of the side of those. We see some things in fleet that we are currently using and implementing. And again, there's obviously governance from our perspective. Is it possible when we work through that, we can say, look, we love that, what we currently have in fleet. Can we bring that component into Focus? Or Focus has something that is really good. Can we bring it into fleet? Can we do that? What impact does that have, and does that work?
100%. That's the fundamental model of the sort of Formbird platform, is that reutilization of components and the number of components that we have and how they can be shared. You know, they operate as kind of as you know, as building blocks, as Lego blocks or what have you. So moving them between environments is just the same as between the different fleet environments as to the other users. And, you know, we've you know, the fleet app does contain a lot of cross-pollination, of course, between the others. So our component library just keeps growing. So absolutely. No, and that's the fundamental architecture of the platform.
I'll just jump in. There's some specific components which are being developed for fleet, which would need some work to work in others.
Yeah, So what Paul's saying there is there are components. The word component is also a functional unit. So some of them are very embedded into the behaviour of the application. Others are you know, autonomous. So whether it be a checklist or whatever, they're autonomous. But we're actually moving more and more to using components to perhaps be unique to a particular function, because I have a component has increased access to, if you like, the underneath technology. So we're actually encouraging our developers to use them because it actually provides, you know, greater functional capability. So there are two levels of components. There's a component which is fundamentally part of the application, and then there's kind of those, and probably the ones you're talking about are the ones that are totally portable, which is, you know, the checklist or the checkbox or the whatever it is. They're very standalone.
Yeah.
And yet, so thank you for everyone, and particularly thanks to Andrew for sharing that and putting that slideshow together. Very much appreciated. He said he was going to wing it and not put any effort into it, but he couldn't help himself. And it was probably Ngaire or Cherie who actually put it together.
Correct.
So let's all thank Cherie or Ngaire.
Cherie.
This time today.
Mark, I just don't want to lose sight of this risk assessment working group.
Yes.
So I don't know, it depends on people's comfort levels and who's interested.
Yeah, I think, look, I mean, I'd like to understand the sort of business problem as well, because there's sort of a lot of talk about, you know, what risk assessment is, but I personally don't have a good handle on, you know, what the objectives are with it, other than, you know, okay, I go through a checklist and say, yep, this bit of plant has been assessed. But, you know, is it cyclic? Is it daily? Is it the combination of the daily driver check? Is it incorporated into that? Is it just simply an extension of that? Is it a cyclic thing that we can, you know, make common? Yeah.
Look, typically, Mark, it's when you're purchasing a new asset, and we often ask the manufacturer to supply us with a risk assessment. So they basically look at that piece of plant, you know, crushing, hydraulic pressure, all those types of things. They're all pretty common risks involved in each plant. They provide that document, which we then run through with the operational staff, and then we will just review that risk assessment annually at the major service. Just
Can you send Paul and myself and Adam, or, you know, just send it to me or Paul, and we can share it, what one of those looks like and what have you?
Sure. Yeah. No worries at all.
Do you then rerun that risk assessment on an annual basis, what they've done, or have they pre-risked it before you, or do they have a suggested list of items that they want you to perform on a cyclic basis?
I think the point of difference with Plan Assessor and what they hang their hat on is that they have a database of assets that they have all the common data for. So you can just plug in a Caterpillar XYZ and it's all there. But what we've found is that we've gone a bit more generic and we're not having any issues with that. What we're saying is, although they're very machine specific, a generic starting point is a very good starting point. And then you can just add in the additional risks that are identified. Then you need to put controls in place. A lot of the controls that we find are stickers, you know, beware of heat or whatever. It's a fairly generic process right across the board, but it just becomes a bit more asset specific. So it's kind of like a PM checklist in my mind, that there'll be a master table of checks or risks, and then you kind of allocate them to each different machine type. It's a fairly simple process. It's more the ability, for my mind, in you don't want to lose sight of that risk assessment. So you get it when the machine's purchased and people just file it away on a filing cabinet and we ignore it. I think the benefit with Formbird is we potentially set it up as a PM service that's attached to your annual service of the machine. The mechanic just checks it, makes sure nothing's changed. If something changes, then it triggers off a secondary process. If not, we just sign it that we've reviewed it and away we go.
Okay.
It's a bit more complicated than that, but that's the general idea.
Okay. Okay, so maybe share that, and we can sort of start, you know, sharing it between those who want to kick in or want to keep a good eye on it, and we can, you know, again, use these forums as a sort of update. And yes, if we're doing it monthly, then we can use these as a little bit of a project meeting, which probably if we only did it quarterly, it'd be a little bit slow and laborious. So, okay, well, popularity voting is fantastic. No complaints from us. And we won't feel insulted if someone doesn't turn up next time. Although we'll know who didn't. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Andrew. And thanks, everyone else, for chipping in. And it was great to have all the new guys on board. And happy hunting.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, guys.
Ciao.
Thanks, guys.
Hi.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Bye.